let's begin.
When I was in college, I often went home to my hometown on weekends. One day, on another weekend, my friend decided to go with me, only she was going to go in her car. On Saturday evening, I had a very vivid dream. In it, a little girl came up to me and said, "Please, take care of my sister." And she showed me a photo of a car accident on the highway. There were two cars there, my friend's silver Corolla car and a black Ford Explorer. The next morning, I immediately called her, told her about this dream, and asked if she had a sister. That's why I only saw her brothers. Her answer stunned me. "Well, my mother once had a dead girl." I asked her how old she would be today, to which she replied, 5. I immediately linked this age with the girl from the dream, and became even more worried. I assumed that it was her sister and persuaded her friend to go in my car. The next night, sitting at home in my hometown, I accidentally turned on the news, which showed a car accident. The same stretch of highway, but this time there was only that Ford. To be honest, it scares me to this day.
In the quaint town of Ravenswood, nestled at the edge of an ancient forest, lay the old Ravenswood Cemetery, a sprawling expanse of tombstones and crypts that dated back centuries. The cemetery had always been a source of local legends and eerie tales. Jacob Morris, a 35-year-old with a somber disposition and a keen interest in local history, had recently taken up the position of the cemetery's groundskeeper. Jacob, with his deep-set eyes, rugged beard, and quiet demeanor, was fascinated by the cemetery's lore. He lived alone in a small cottage on the cemetery's grounds, a solitary figure against the backdrop of the silent graves. As he began his duties, Jacob noticed something peculiar about the cemetery. The tombstones seemed to shift positions ever so slightly each night. Initially, he dismissed this as a trick of the mind, the shadows playing in the moonlight. However, as the days passed, the changes became more pronounced. One night, as Jacob patrolled the grounds, he heard a faint whispering coming from the graves. The whispers grew louder, turning into pained moans and cries for help. Frightened, yet compelled to investigate, he discovered that the voices emanated from the tombstones themselves. Each gravestone told the tale of the soul buried beneath, stories of unfinished business, tragic deaths, and wrongful deeds. The souls, bound to the cemetery, were trapped, unable to move on. Jacob realized that the cemetery was not just a resting place for the dead, but a prison. As he delved deeper into the cemetery's history, Jacob learned of a curse placed upon it by a scorned witch centuries ago. The curse bound the souls to their graves, condemning them to an eternity in limbo, and tasked the groundskeeper with their upkeep. Determined to break the curse and free the tormented souls, Jacob scoured ancient texts and local folklore for a solution. He learned of a ritual that could release the souls, but it came with a dire warning. The curse demanded a keeper, and if the souls were freed, another must take their place. Undeterred, Jacob decided to perform the ritual on the night of the winter solstice, the time when the veil between the living and the dead was thinnest. As he chanted the incantations, the ground trembled, and a ghostly light emanated from the graves. The air filled with the sounds of the souls crying out as they were released from their bonds. But as the last of the spirits ascended, the curse's true nature revealed itself. A dark, spectral force emerged from the depths of the cemetery, a manifestation of the curse itself. It enveloped Jacob, binding him to the cemetery as its new keeper. The next morning, the townsfolk of Ravenswood found the cemetery eerily silent, the graves still and at peace. But Jacob was nowhere to be found. In his place, a new gravestone appeared. Jacob Morris, keeper of the graves. In the outskirts of the sleepy town of Blackwood, hidden within an overgrown and neglected cemetery, stood an ancient mausoleum rumored to be cursed. Amber Collins, a 26-year-old urban explorer and vlogger, known for her daring adventures into the unknown, decided to investigate the mausoleum for her next video. Amber, with her striking red hair, fearless attitude, and camera always in hand, was drawn to the thrill of uncovering secrets and myths. Joined by her friends, Luke, a fellow adventurer, and Melissa, a budding paranormal investigator, Amber set out to the cemetery on a crisp autumn evening. The cemetery was a labyrinth of tombstones and crypts, shrouded in mist and an eerie silence. As they approached the mausoleum, a sense of unease washed over them. The structure was imposing, with Gothic architecture and dark, weathered stone. It was said to be the final resting place of Lady Isabella Hawthorne, a noblewoman from the 18th century, rumored to have been a witch. Ignoring the chill that crept up their spines, the trio entered the mausoleum. Inside, they found a tomb with Lady Isabella's effigy carved into it, her stone face serene yet haunting. Amber began filming, capturing the chilling ambience of the mausoleum. As night fell, strange occurrences began. The air inside the mausoleum grew colder. The shadows seemed to move on their own, and a soft, whispering voice echoed off the stone walls. Amber and her friends felt a growing sense of dread, but their desire to document the experience kept them from leaving. The mausoleum's curse revealed itself when Melissa attempted to read an inscription on the tomb. The moment she touched it, the effigy's eyes seemed to open, a dark energy emanating from it. The door to the mausoleum slammed shut, trapping them inside. Panicked, they tried to open the door, but it was as if the mausoleum had come alive, its walls pulsating with a malevolent force. The whispering voice grew louder, morphing into a cacophony of screams and curses. Amber continued to film, her camera capturing the terrifying events. The footage showed glimpses of Lady Isabella's ghostly form, her spectral figure surrounded by a dark aura, her eyes filled with vengeance. In a desperate bid for escape, Luke discovered a loose stone in the wall. Behind it, they found a hidden compartment containing a diary. The diary belonged to Lady Isabella, revealing her to be a practitioner of dark arts who had cursed her own tomb as an eternal sentinel. Realizing the curse was tied to the diary, Amber decided to remove it from the mausoleum, hoping to break the cycle. But as they neared the exit with the diary, Lady Isabella's spirit manifested fully, her form terrifying and wrathful. In the story's horrifying climax, the spirit unleashed her fury. The walls of the mausoleum shook, cryptic symbols glowed ominously, and an otherworldly wind howled through the chamber. Lady Isabella's ghost attacked, her spectral hands choking the life out of Luke and Melissa, their bodies falling lifeless to the ground. Amber, in a final act of desperation, threw the diary into the tomb. The mausoleum trembled violently, a blinding light erupting from the tomb. Then, suddenly, everything went silent. The next morning, the cemetery was peaceful, the mausoleum standing undisturbed. Inside, Amber was found unconscious, her camera beside her, footage intact. Luke and Melissa were nowhere to be seen, their fate a mystery. Amber never spoke of what happened that night, haunted by the loss of her friends and the horrors she witnessed. The footage was released, becoming a viral sensation, but viewers debated its authenticity, unaware of the true terror of the cursed mausoleum. The mausoleum remained standing, its curse dormant but not broken, waiting for the next unwary soul to awaken its wrath. In the small, rural town of Eldridge, a group of teenagers, seeking thrills and a break from the monotony of small-town life, dared each other to spend a night in the old Hillcrest Cemetery. The cemetery, known for its decrepit state and chilling legends, was the perfect setting for a test of courage. Among the group were Tyler, a brash and impulsive high school athlete; Rachel, his girlfriend, who shared his love for adventure; Ethan, a quiet and thoughtful bookworm; and Jenna, a skeptic who relished debunking local myths. As the sun set, the group made their way to the cemetery, armed with flashlights and a mix of excitement and apprehension. Hillcrest Cemetery was an eerie sight in the moonlight, its tombstones crooked and overgrown with weeds, the shadows of the gnarled trees casting ghostly shapes. The teenagers found a spot near an old mausoleum to set up camp. As the night deepened, they shared ghost stories and laughed off the spooky atmosphere. However, Their bravado began to wane as the air grew colder, and an unnatural silence enveloped the cemetery. At the stroke of midnight, the first of the ghostly apparitions appeared. A spectral woman in a tattered dress wandered among the gravestones, her eyes hollow with sorrow. She seemed unaware of the teenager's presence until Tyler, in a moment of reckless bravado, approached her. As he neared, the ghostly woman turned to him, her face contorting into a mask of anguish. She reached out to Tyler, her hand passing through him, leaving him frozen in terror. The other teens watched in horror as the ghostly woman vanished, leaving Tyler pale and shaken. The encounter was just the beginning. As the night progressed, more apparitions appeared. Ethan saw a young soldier, his uniform dating back to the Civil War, repeating his last moments in battle. Jenna witnessed a procession of mourners from a bygone era, their faces twisted in grief for a child taken too soon. Rachel, attempting to rationalize their experiences, suggested they were just seeing things, the power of suggestion amplified by the cemetery's creepy setting. But her skepticism was shattered when the ghosts began to interact with them more directly. The spirits, trapped in Hillcrest Cemetery, began to reenact the tragic events of their lives, drawing the teenagers into their tormented world. The cemetery became a stage for the unresolved dramas of the dead, the lines between the living and the spectral blurring. In a terrifying climax, the ghosts converged on the group, their wails and cries filling the night. The teenagers, realizing they were in grave danger, attempted to flee but found themselves disoriented, the paths of the cemetery twisting and turning against them. Ethan, in a moment of clarity, understood that the spirits sought closure, their stories needing to be heard and acknowledged. But as he tried to communicate this to his friends, a dense, ghostly fog enveloped them, separating them from each other. One by one, the teenagers were consumed by the vengeful spirits, their screams echoing through the night. Rachel, the last to be taken, saw the ghosts of her friends join the spectral procession, their eyes empty, their fates sealed. By morning, Hillcrest Cemetery was silent once more. The teenagers were nowhere to be found, their belongings scattered near the mausoleum. The town of Eldridge awoke to the mystery of their disappearance, the cemetery reclaiming its reputation as a place of haunting and sorrow.
Thank you for being here when you have so many other options.